Hey, Social Work 321 students, welcome to week 2. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting concepts this week. I want to go over some housekeeping first. Just make sure you understand your discussion on concerns about working with clients is due this week, and that's worth 30 points. I definitely want you to open up and share, what are your fears? And I know when I first started social work, I was scared to death, but also very excited. But it's a power position, it's a control position, and it's a vulnerable position. And we have to be okay with vulnerability to be in the mental health profession. And in any area of professionalism, vulnerability is appropriate. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. If you haven't read any of her books yet, I highly recommend them. She's got some wonderful YouTubes out there. Her TED Talk has gone very viral. She actually has a program on Netflix right now. So look up Brene Brown if you don't know that name. One of my favorite presentations that she does is about empathy. And she does this cartoon version in which I believe it's a cartoon bear, tries to help another animal friend. And by demonstrating what empathy is, instead of putting a ladder down in the hole the other animal's in, he climbs down the ladder, gets in the hole with the animal. And so if you haven't seen that cartoon, it's really good. I believe it's on this module. Anyway, empathy, we'll talk about that this week. We're going to talk about how being a professional means having empathy. There's a big difference between having sympathy for a client and really attempting to understand where they've been and who they are. So those of us who come from more challenging backgrounds, in some ways as a social work, that can be a plus. Why? Because you have built-in empathy. If you had a rough childhood and you're working with kids as a school social worker, guess what? You're going to really comprehend what they're going through. You're going to have a better understanding of what it's like to, live in a travel trailer without a floor in it with a drug-addicted dad, because you had a similar experience in some way. Have you been poor? A lot of us in rural Nevada have had to deal with poverty on some level. And so we have a better understanding when we're trying to help those who are vulnerable because of lack of funds. And so have you been oppressed? If you have been oppressed, if you really understand what it means to not feel like you have personal power because of race, sexual orientation, gender, then you are going to be able to have more empathy for those who feel oppressed in whatever way. I put this in my notes. Perhaps you're a boy who's had a lot of sisters. Guess what? You'll better understand women. If you're a girl who's had a lot of brothers, I came after 4 brothers. Yeah, had to kind of fight for every scrap of food I got. So that changes you. That helps you in some ways to become a professional that has some built-in empathy. So professionalism. I love this definition that your textbook gives you. A professional is one who has or displays self-knowledge, experience, standards, or expertise, and is competent, efficient. And in the case of social worker, professionalism goes well beyond knowledge, competence, and expertise to incorporate qualities of honesty, humor, humility, dedication, commitment, and altruism. Woohoo! So, professionalism, obviously, we talked a little bit last week about the importance of integrity. Social workers should not participate in, condone, or be associated with dishonesty, fraud, or deception. So, honesty. There will very likely be situations in which you feel like it might be helpful to bend the truth a little bit, or just not share information that you have, and definitely that's an important part of integrity. Integrity is one of our core values, and the ethical principle is that social workers behave in a trustworthy manner. There's a wonderful book out there written by a social worker. It's not a textbook, it's a real easy read, and it's called How Not to Practice Social Work. I love it. It's a really, really fun book. And one of the things it talks about in this book is that people who go into this profession often need professional help the most. So I know in my graduate school experience, it was mandatory that we have at least one professional session with a therapist. And I had a situation when I was in graduate school in which my brother was the victim of suicide. He took his own life while I was in graduate school. And this is a brother that was very near and dear to my heart. I had talked to him on the phone just the day before he took his own life. And I was in a very, very bad place emotionally when I was in graduate school. Luckily, I was surrounded by future social workers, and I often say that when I found social work, when I found graduate school, I felt like I'd discovered my mothership, and it was a really good place to be for me. But a big part of being a professional is self-understanding and self-control. Let's start out talking a little bit about self-understanding. If you haven't ever been to a therapist or a counselor, hey, be vulnerable, put yourself out there. If you've got insurance, slap down that insurance card and try a session or two. Another great place to get some self vision, to better understand, some self-understanding, would be through a 12-step meeting. A lot of these can be very eye-opening. Many of us either care about someone who has a problem with substance abuse, or we might have a problem ourselves with some kind of addictive behavior. And so a 12-step program is a great place for some self-understanding. Recognize what is motivating behaviors that you have, that maybe you habits that you'd like to get rid of, that kind of thing. Self-understanding and self-control are not products or outcomes that can be completed and then set aside. It's kind of an ongoing thing. And I know that in my personal life, Al-Anon has been very, very helpful. And this is the 12-step program. If you're not familiar with it, it's the 12-step program for those of us who care about someone who has an addiction issue. And, I come from, we put the fun and dysfunctional in my family, and that's okay. but we're very open about some of the challenging situations that we've had in our family. And part of that is because I think most of my siblings definitely are in this continual process of self-development. And we like to examine and see where we're coming from, where we're going. A 12-step program, a trip to a therapist's office, these are great places to figure this out as we're becoming professionals. We begin with self-examination, and like I said last week, you look in the mirror once you feel good about yourself, you've done what you need to prepare yourself for the day. Then you can step back and focus on others. And you're confident to deal with others when you've done what you need to do for yourself. Now, okay, I talk about that in terms of, hygiene, personal hygiene, dress for success. I like that saying. Dress the way you want others to see you. Daisy, what are you doing? Daisy, you're not part of this presentation. Come here. She knows she's in trouble. What are you doing? Come here. Oh, sorry about my dog. Okay. Come here. Where'd you go? Okay, so yeah, we have matching outfits today. Where was I? Okay, so there will be times that your client's issues might trigger your own. When this happens, if you have done the work, done the self-examination, then it's not going to be as challenging. It's still going to be challenging, trust me. There will be times that you're working with someone who maybe had a similar experience that you had as well, and it can be real challenging. Obviously, it gives you that built-in empathy, which is a very good thing, but it can also be very triggering. So that process of self-discovery is really important. It can give rise to some disturbing thoughts, feelings, or sensations. You may find yourself reconsidering some of your life choices. However, like C.S. Lewis said, you can't change the past, but you can change the future, right? Starting from now, you can change the future. So you can gain self-understanding. You may recognize a parallel need for self-control and self-discipline. And a big part of being a professional is self-control and self-discipline. You're doing it right now, watching a lecture online. This is self-discipline, isn't it? And I know some of you, you watch these lectures while you're getting ready in the morning. You plug them in while you're cooking dinner. I know how busy your lives are, but the habits of self-discipline are going to serve you throughout your profession, and they'll serve your clients as well. So let's talk a little bit about environmental and cultural contexts. So in my professional experiences, I've seen a variety of cultures represent themselves. When I was working in Montana, I had an experience where I worked with a family that had several teenage daughters, and the cultural expectation for the girls was that at about age 14, they would get pregnant so that they could get on welfare so that they could start bringing in an income. I kid you not. This was the family culture. So when we talk about looking at policy, sometimes when it's within a family culture, it's not written down anywhere, is it? It's just part of, what's going on in that family. What are you doing? You want to come up here? Okay, come on. Yeah, here's my assistant. Yeah, we have matching outfits on today, don't we? Okay. All right, you're gonna help teach empathy today? All right. You're gonna teach culture? Want to talk about doggy culture? Yes, very important stuff. This is Daisy. Say hi. Okay. All right, where was I? Okay, so yeah, family cultures. That can be a more challenging situation than working with, written policy at an agency. Family culture, traditions that have been carried on through the generations, expectations that are inappropriate, like a 14-year-old getting pregnant so that she can start bringing in some money through welfare. How do you deal with something like that? It can be really challenging. So let's talk about the term environment. This can be a broad concept. It includes the natural physical environment. It also includes the emotional environment that people are dealing with, that people are a part of. And in working with cultures and subcultures, again, validation is very important. How did I deal with teenage girls that have this expectation? Well, you validate. Okay, so you feel like it's going to give you more personal power to help bring in some income for the family, right? Yeah, and validate what their emotional state is, why they would go along with something that seems so crazy to most of us. Human behavior with and toward other humans, other life forms, and the planet Earth is a part of what we all call culture. One of the things that I pointed out in your module, I have a little video of a fishbowl, and so it's been said that our culture is like water in a fishbowl, and we don't even recognize it unless we're taken out of it, which is, I think, the reason that travel and experiencing places and people outside of our own comfort zone can be very, very important. We can't always afford the kind of travel experience that can really change us, but I hope you guys are taking advantage of things like trainings that will take you to other cities and online. I mean, we have a very diverse opportunity with online trainings as social workers where we can learn and study other cultures. I know it's been said that a library card, back in the day when we had to have a card to go to the library, a library card would take you anywhere in the world. And I think that's true. We can read, we can better comprehend the society that we live in by reading more and understanding the history, where we came from. I hope that as you strive to become a professional, reading voraciously is a part of that. There's a wonderful book called The Glass Castle. And this is a story, if you haven't read it, it's by Jeanette Walls. It starts out in Battle Mountain, Nevada. Great story of a family, a little girl growing up in a family in which her father is a functional alcoholic. Her mother's bipolar, and very challenging situation for a child to grow up in. There's another book series, The Child Called It. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. It's not an easy read. For those of us who've had difficult childhoods, it can be a very triggering book in terms of the kind of physical abuse that Dave Peltzer experiences as a child at the hands of his own mother. But it also can be very empowering because he's able to get into the foster care program and able to turn his life around. Very, very difficult read. A lot of people don't believe that it was real and accused him of making it up. But I think for those of us in this line of work, we need to recognize that there's horrific things that go on, and we need to be willing to believe when children share horrific things that happen. Another book that I really enjoy is The Kite Runner. This helped me better understand Middle Eastern cultures and what kind of control can happen within a society and can affect families and individuals. There's a book that is put out by AA, 12-step programs, called From Survival to Recovery. This is a book that I actually read in conjunction with an Al-Anon group. Very, very powerful book. Again, not an easy read. Those are all my book recommendations for this week. And I would love to hear about books that you've read that have changed you, that have helped you better understand cultures. And let's go on. Let's talk a little bit about the genograms. I put some information about genograms in this week's module because I think that that's kind of, as we're doing kind of some self-discovery, self-evaluation, I think it's important to look at where we come from. A genogram is a way to look at your past family history. And so when you do a genogram, and I hope you'll watch the supplemental videos that I provided for you, when you do a genogram, you're better able to understand some of the addiction history in your family, maybe some of the mental health issues, as well as physical health issues that have occurred in your family. In my genogram, and I did my first genogram in one of my first social work positions in my undergraduate years, and my first genogram was in conjunction with teaching inner city women in Cleveland, Ohio, helping them get off of welfare and teaching nutrition and parenting classes to Head Start parents in the inner city of Cleveland. I was able to have the opportunity to teach them how to do genograms when I didn't really know very well myself, so I was doing it for myself for the first time as well. And that self-discovery was really interesting for me. I did another more formal one when I was in graduate school. And at that point, I remember my professor coming and going, "What on earth are you doing? You know, are you sure you're doing this right?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, crazy family." But in my family history, we have the 3 A's. There's a whole lot of alcoholism, there's autism, and there's Alzheimer's. So the 3 big A's, and it's very interesting. I hope you have a good experience. I hope you have the time to map out a genogram of your own, because it's just a great way to do some self-evaluation. See where you come from. Talk to some of your elderly relatives. Get some of those stories. I'm lucky that I come from a family where my father was a prolific writer, and he wrote a lot of our family history. He wrote about my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, and my great-great-great-grandfather. And so I've got a wealth of material, and it's really interesting to read some of the stories that these men wrote, and women. I've got some of my great-great-grandmother's diary entries and things like that. but it's very interesting to read between the lines of just how sexist the culture was, 100 years ago or so. And but they didn't recognize that, because why? They were in their fishbowl. That water surrounding them, that was normal to them. This blatantly sexist culture was absolutely normal. So this is when we talk about some of the changes that need to be made in terms of social justice. It's recognizing those things. And you might, as you get more and more educated, recognize when there's sexist or racist or homophobic language going on, and you can be the one to say, hey, no, let's maybe restate that. Some of what I think is really important that you need to learn this week includes fundamental attribution error. Okay, and this is when we over-evaluate a personal or an internal social or environmental situation. So over-evaluating something that's going on. An example that I can give you is there was a time in one of my past lives in my work history where I was working in the inner city of Las Vegas, and I was working for an agency that was involved with equestrian therapy. And I know some of you are really interested in that, right? Riding horses, heck yeah, sounds like fun. I worked with autistic children that had this opportunity to participate in equestrian therapy, but if Medicaid was going to pay for the hour on the horse, they had to do a half an hour of behavioral therapy with a social worker. So that's where I came in. And I had one situation that I would call fundamental attribution error, in which I had a mother who was very, very concerned about her son's autistic behavior. But what was interesting is that I saw a lot of his behavior occurred when he was stressed out because of mom's behavior. And so instead of attributing the behavior to the child, I was able to help the mom recognize that it was stemming from what she was doing. So what would happen is when the little boy would get on the horse, and he was only like 5 years old, but when he'd get on the horse, some of those autistic attributes, the stimming that these children do, which is basically repetitive movement, banging their head, that's stimming, clapping, some kids clap, some kids jump, he would flap. He would flap his hands like this, and the mom would yell at him while he was on the horse for flapping his hands. Guess what that did? It increased his anxiety. So guess what? He flapped some more. So sometimes we need to step back and reevaluate and make sure that we're attributing what's going on to the appropriate source. Once we're able to work through where the anxiety is coming from, we're better able to work through why that behavior is happening in the first place. Personality changes can often occur when people attempt to explain their own lapses of judgment, their own misbehavior. They often mention external factors such as other people or circumstances. So recognizing that there are going to be times when our own behavior or our client's behavior is blamed on someone else. That's kind of the opposite of what I'm talking about. We want to help our clients be accountable for their own behavior. And knowledge, expertise, and self-efficacy, very, very important concepts. This is a fabulous textbook. I hope you guys are really enjoying it. Another important concept that I want you to really understand this week are technique and allegiance factors. So, what do we mean by allegiance? And that means, what does our client value? to what degree do helpers believe in the value and the effectiveness of what they do and how they do it? Where is your allegiance? Do you believe that you can be effective? You know, I think a very basic concept that all of us need to really embrace is this idea that as professionals, we're not going to change anybody. We're not going to fix anybody. As professionals, we give other people a safe place to work out their own solutions. When we respect our client enough to trust them to be able to work out their own solutions, that's when they begin to help themselves. You know, I think that many people go into social work because they want to help, because they want to fix, because they want to change. When I say change is possible, I truly believe that, but I do not believe that you as a social worker you're not going to change anybody. We're not superheroes. We provide the superhero cape to our clients. We help them figure out what their superpower is. That's what our superpower is. Helping others figure out their superpowers. I know I've told you this story before, but I'm going to tell you again. When I was a school social worker, one of my favorite things to do, I kept a superhero cape in my office, hung on my coat rack. And when a child came in and shared an incident in which they had really been able to make a difference in the life of somebody else, that's when they got to wear that superhero cape. And that's what we do. We help provide, we help our clients recognize that they are capable of helping themselves. So enjoy your textbook this week. Make sure that you go through the PowerPoint presentation. That kind of outlines the textbook for you really, really well, and has some definitions on there that you'll need to understand for the upcoming quiz next week. And we also have, coming up in a few weeks, we have our Zoom meeting on February 22nd. Hope you'll be there for that. We have a special guest speaker who I'm really excited about. So anyway, have a great week. Don't hesitate to call, text, or email me if you have any questions about the material or any of the assignments. And I look forward to hearing from you. Daisy says bye. Say bye, Daisy. Yes, I know. She loves me. Yeah. All right.